Hi, my name is Izzy, and I'm a sophomore at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. This chilling nightmare happened to me when I was a freshman. It was December, and I worked as a hostess and waitress in the evenings and most weekends at a big seafood restaurant near campus. It was popular with students and locals, and during this early Christmas season, it was already an hour's wait for a table any night of the week. One night when I was working as the hostess, an older man came in and worked his way through the crowd at the door. He said he had a reservation under Edward for one person at 9 and had requested a table in the back where it was quieter. I saw it on the reservations list, checked the table, and told him it would just be a couple of minutes, and his table would be ready. He stood hunched over a big belly and wearing old man wire-rimmed glasses hanging on the tip of his nose. I remember that detail because he had a strange manner about him. He seemed kind enough, just lost, as if he had something on his mind that he wanted to tell everyone who passed him. In a few minutes, I told him his table was ready and to follow me. I sat him in the back corner, and he said perfect. I gave him the menu and told him the lobster thermidor was the evening special. One of the waiters came and took his order. From my position at the front, I could see all the way to the back to where he was seated at the table alone and watched him open a Bible as he waited for his dinner. I saw him making notes on the white paper table cover at one point. We give kids crayons to draw on it when they are in the restaurant. His food was served, and he did get the lobster thermidor. He placed his Bible on the right side of the dinner and sat with bowed head. His right hand is on the Bible, and a fork is held up in his left hand. Peculiarly funny, I thought when I passed him by seating another table. After a short while, the waiter went to check on his dinner. He found the man under the reservation as Edward, with his head bowed, apparently deep in prayer, so he did not disturb the gentleman. The night passed and we were swamped with customers. Everyone was busy rushing orders and caring for guests that the man in prayer wasn't even regarded. As we approached 11 and our closing time, I went to the gentleman and asked if I could have his dinner box to go for him as we were closing. He didn't move, so I tapped him on his shoulder, saying, "Sir, sorry to disturb you, but we are closing. Can I box your dinner to go?" When I touched his shoulder and touched it so gently, he fell forward with his head and shoulders hitting the table. That was very frightening, but not the end of the story. The scary part was yet to be revealed. When he fell forward, his hand pushed the Bible forward, and under the Bible, he had written on the table cover a message. "I'm sorry for the 6 girls I have killed." I was shocked, and the manager called the police and a coroner came to the restaurant. We never heard if the man was a serial killer or what his real name was. As a girl going to university at a Big Ten school, you must be careful of your surroundings. These campuses are big, and it can be a long walk between classrooms and dorms at night. There are safety stations along most walks, but you must still be aware. I'm currently in my senior year and a biology student in the pre-med program. To say my heavy study load is an understatement, and it requires that I often put in long hours of study after class. I study best in the library, which has a study cubicle, or in one of the empty classrooms after hours. I can't study in my house, which I share with 6 others off campus but a short walk away. The house is always filled with music and guests, especially on the weekends, which begin on Thursday night. It's great college life, but you must stay hidden on campus when you need to study. This past spring, finals week was approaching, and I had several big projects due. On a Friday night, I decided to go study in one of the classroom buildings. I know that sounds nerdy, but I had to complete the work, and besides, I had plans for the weekend that I didn't want to mess up either. I went to the biology lab at about 9 p.m. I showed security my student ID. If you have a student ID, you can enter any building 24/7 for research projects, class, and to study, as I needed this night. The building was dark except for the minimal security lighting when I entered, and I could tell I was the only person in the building. I went down the hall to a classroom where I have several courses, turned on the lights, and took the desk I usually sit in when in class, which is in the back center row. Just habit, I guess. I feel comfortable at that desk. I opened my textbook and my laptop and focused on my project. An hour passed when I heard someone coming down the hallway. I looked up, and a man dressed casually in student attire walked in. At the doorway, he asked if he could study in the room. I thought this strange since he could choose from a whole building of classrooms, but I didn't want to appear rude or anything, so I said sure. He had a backpack with him, but he never opened it. He just picked a desk in the first row and sat down. I continued working on my project, paying little attention to him. Still, after a few minutes of tension in the room, I looked up, and this guy was just staring at me from the desk in the first row. I tried to focus, thinking he would turn around and begin his work, but 5 minutes later, he was still staring at me. I decided that I'd go home and finish up in the morning. I was so uncomfortable with this dude in the room. I packed up my books and computer and left the room. I could feel this guy's eyes on me as I went, burning through me. When I was in the quad walking towards my house, I became aware of footsteps behind me, so I picked up my pace, and the footsteps also followed faster. No one else was out in the quad or walking anywhere. As I turned out of campus onto the neighborhood street my house was on, I began running. And not far behind me, the same guy following me. Once inside my house with my housemates, I felt safe again and didn't think about the guy until I was readying for bed. I was pulling the window blind down and saw him standing in a shadow, but still illuminated by a street lamp. He was clearly stalking me. I double-checked the front and back door to ensure they were bolted, and the windows were all locked, then went to my room and locked that door before getting into bed. Around 2 a.m., I peeked out the window, and he was sitting on a wall not far off. In the morning, he was gone. I had slept terribly that night. When I left the house in the morning and went to lock the door, I noticed the door had huge gouge marks where someone had used a screwdriver or something around the lock. I was sure it was the guy from the biology lab building the night before, but no way to prove it. What would he have done if he had broken inside? In late August 2013, it was the beginning of my freshman year at Michigan State University in East Lansing. I arrived on campus with my family and registered in my dorm. I hadn't brought a lot of stuff, but it still took a few loads from the car and some time to get organized in the room. I was grateful for the help my mom and dad gave me in getting unpacked. It was the basic dorm room, very similar to dorm rooms at every state university in America, but it felt warm and inviting with a few posters I had collected. My books on the shelf above the desk and a few homey pillows on the bed. With my stuff organized, my parents said goodbye and good luck, and returned to Grand Rapids. I went to the student union to get acquainted with other incoming freshmen and await my roommate. My roommate finally arrived and had only the essential move-in bedding, a suitcase of clothes, and a laptop computer. He was very strange and a little creepy. He was clearly not a social kid. He even seemed inept just saying hello. I introduced myself to him and offered my hand, which he looked at and, in an awkward pause, then, after comprehending the social gesture, gave me a dead fish handshake without even looking at me. I told him my name and had to ask his name 3 times since he did not offer it when we shook hands, or after I greeted him with a welcome to the room, or after the "what's your major and where you from" conversation starters. He finally said, "My name is Hank." I said, "Happy to meet you, Hank," and tried to make some more small talk. But he answered my questions mostly with yes and no answers or nothing. I gave up within a few minutes of this effort, and he sat on his bed with his laptop. I sat on mine with my laptop, messaging friends getting moved in at their universities and not speaking with my roommate. I had already decided that I would request a new dorm assignment. Any other roommate would be better than Hank. I didn't think him dangerous, just creepy and awkward, but I was about to learn so much more. That evening, I socialized in the hall and got to know other students on my floor. They seemed cool, so the transition to the dorm overall was looking good. I went with a couple new friends walking around campus, and we met more incoming freshmen and compared schedules for the coming days of orientation. When I returned to my room, Hank was in the same position on his bed when I left him 4 hours earlier. I had dinner in the cafeteria, but I don't know if he went out to eat at all. I said, "What's up, Hank?" And not surprising, he didn't answer. I got ready for bed, turned my reading light out above my bed, and pulled my covers up to sleep. I didn't fall asleep, just lying on my side with my back to Hank. Hank was on his laptop until well after midnight with his reading light on. When he finally turned his light out, I fell asleep, but was abruptly awakened at the same hour. The blinds to the room had been lifted, and the exterior building lights showed into the room, making everything visible. Hank was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at me. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and said, "Hank, what are you doing?" He whispered back something unintelligible and fell back onto his pillow asleep. When I woke in the morning, Hank was already gone from the room. I never heard him leave. It was Saturday morning, the first day of orientation and many planned campus activities. After breakfast, I joined my assigned group, and we began with the campus tour and friendship building. As we passed through an arbor, I heard a student in front of me saying, "Look at that kid over there! What's he doing?" I saw Hank hugging a tree and rubbing his cheek on the bark. He had one leg wrapped around the base of the trunk holding on. The orientation sophomore leading our group didn't notice. Otherwise, I'm sure she would have asked him to step out of the garden spot he was in. I walked past him and didn't say a word. I looked the other way just to avoid any possible eye contact. The two ahead of me continued to laugh at the guy and the tree, and I told them that was my roommate as a conversation starter. They quickly took me under their arms, and we laughed together. They were sympathetic to my plight on the first night on campus. We became instant friends. We made plans for the night together. The school administration also texted me that they had another roommate for me, so things were looking up. I spent the evening playing cards with my new friends and meeting more students who would be in my classes. It was a lot of fun. When I returned to my room, Hank sat in a chair facing the door. I said, "What's up, Hank?" He didn't reply, and that was fine with me. Tomorrow night I'll have a new room and roommate. I sat down on my bed and opened my laptop. I instantly saw that I had left it unlocked and could see that all my messages had been opened. I was positive I had not read any of them, but they were all open. I asked Hank had he been on my laptop. He didn't respond. He just sat in the chair staring at the door, but I knew this creepy roommate had gone through all my messages on my computer. I closed and locked my laptop without saying anything more to Hank. I knew it would only fall on deaf ears. Tomorrow I'll be moving rooms. I got ready for bed, but when I went to get into my PJs, they had been moved. I looked in my drawers and saw that all my clothes had been messed with, but everything seemed to be there. I knew I would be gone tomorrow, so I stayed silent, turned my light out, and went to sleep. Sometime after midnight, I awoke to the sound of a zipper. I turned on my light and saw Hank opening my sports bag, his hands pulling my basketball sneakers out. I, very flustered, shouted, "What are you doing, Hank? Why are you in my sports bag?" He stared at me with a stupid grin and said, "I think you have something of mine." That is the most I've gotten out of him since we met. But I have touched nothing of his and knew something was truly wrong in this guy's brain. I just said, "Hank, I don't have anything of yours. Please put my bag down and go to sleep." The next afternoon, I met my new roommate in the same building, and he seemed very nice. He wasn't super great, but he was a regular guy, and we had a friendly conversation. I'm sure we both will get along very well. We laughed and chatted until the lights were out. Again, for the third night since moving onto campus, I woke at the same hour after midnight to a clicking, rattling sound. It came and went. And when it started again, it was louder and more urgent in its rattling. I turned on my light and my roommate turned on his light. And together, we looked around the room for this unnerving noise. Simultaneously, we both saw the door handle jerk and the door rattle. Someone was trying to get into our room. I went to the peephole and looked out into the hall that was always lit 24/7, and through the peephole, I could see a head of brown hair. I knew this wild, unkept hair was that of Hank. I recognized him by only his hair. He was now looking down at the door handle and shaking it with great force. He was trying to break the lock. My roommate dialed campus security, and they arrived in less than 5 minutes. They found Hank in a crazed state, banging the door handle violently. They quickly took him into custody, and only then did we feel safe to open the door. Security had Hank in handcuffs, and I told them he was my former roommate for 2 nights, and that he had gone through my personal things, and I had to change rooms. And now I find him trying to break into my new room. They took him away. I don't know what happened to him after that night. I never saw him again. I suspect he was either suspended or expelled from the university. The rest of my college experience was good, but those 3 chilling nightmare nights still haunt me.